Here's Mike Winters.
And good morning. It is 16 minutes after 7 o'clock, and joining us on the phone this morning, Congresswoman Yvette Herrell back with us. Good morning, ma'am. How you doing today?
I am great. How are you doing, Mike?
Doing good. First off, congratulations on your service, and we thank you very much for your service as a Congresswoman for this last term and over your career here. Obviously, not the outcome we wanted, but it's. I imagine for you, it's kind of a mixed bag. You want to keep serving, but I guess you kind of like, well, my workload just got a little lighter.
Right? Yeah, it's really not great, and I have been really so blessed to be the voice of the 2nd Congressional District, and our team was incredible, both in New Mexico and here in D.C., and still, I think we delivered a lot for the district and really kept everything relevant in terms of energy, the border, agriculture. And in fact, this week we had another really great victory in terms of down on the border utilizing KRWG radio station and doing some data casting so that we can really enhance communication capabilities for law enforcement, first responders, Border Patrol. And those are the kind of problems that our office was able to tackle without introducing a bill. And so many great things we did. But yeah, it's difficult because I just have been so honored to be in this position for the last 2 years.
Well, it's I know you're kind of transitioning out now, but as far as your job as a representative of Congress, they still kept you pretty busy, Liz. Right up to you guys are literally, walking out the door for the last time here.
Yeah, in fact, we'll have vote series all the way up. We had them this week. We'll have them next week, and then again the following week. And then the calendar says that they'll disperse for the Christmas break around December 15th. And then, of course, I'll still be the Congresswoman until January 3rd or 2nd, I think, or 3rd, when they swear in the new people. And so, yeah, a lot of transition happening, moving out of the offices and kind of getting those things shut down and finishing the workload that we can. So, yes, it's been a very busy last week, and the next 2 weeks, I think, will be very busy as well.
Hey, I was listening on the news the other day, and a lot they're talking now is, budgets for the federal government and things. Is that something that you guys will work on before you leave, or is that something they'll pick up in the new Congress in January?
Yeah, that's the big $20,000 question. But they're going to go back to this, the whole sky is falling. Government will shut down if we don't do something. I honestly do not think there's the political will to actually do a real budget where we would take each department, the budget, and go line by line. I don't think they have time, and I don't think they have the political will to do it. So they're going to decide whether or not to do a continuing resolution, which would essentially mean it funds the government at the current funding levels. And now they can pick a date. They can say till January 10th. They can say till next year. And that's the problem. Basically, they're just kicking the can down the road. They're not addressing the true budget issues, the fraud, waste, and abuse, all this overspending. There's no accountability. And to continue just pushing that resolution down the road, it keeps the government from shutting down, of course. But hopefully in the next Congress, the one bright spot is we will have the majority in the House.
Sure.
So we will control the purse strings. We can really take a hard look at these federal budgets, especially for these various departments. And I'm hopeful, and I saw Senator Rand Paul on the TV last night talking about, Congress ought to pass 12 different budget bills, one at a time, that are very succinct, very detailed, instead of putting everything in one big package, which is what they do all the time. And that's where we see a lot of this overspending, this, cause that, it pushes the inflation up. It pushes the cost of living up on everybody. But at some point in time, someone has to step up and say, we've got to get this spending under control. It is reckless, and it's costing so much to the American people.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's look at the world we live in, and it's a direct result of that. So, but
right.
You are right. The silver lining is that at least that we, there is a little bit of balance now with the Republicans holding the House here. Hopefully that can create that balance that we always want to talk about, where checks and balances
Right.
here. So
Yeah, and I think it will. I mean, it's, it is a very narrow margin, but it is the majority, and Nancy Pelosi will not have the gavel. So there, in and of itself, there's two real positives that are going to happen next year. So that's exciting for sure.
Sure. So I'm kind of curious, what's the last month in office like for you? I mean, do you still spend a lot of it working, or is it kind of that, packing up and, setting the table for the next administration? What's it like this time of your job here, of your term in office?
Yeah, it's kind of all of the above.
Yeah.
Because there is that, it's clearly that transition where, members are having to move out of their offices so they can get them ready for the next group of people coming in, or if people want to switch offices. But at the same time, we still have, a pretty hefty legislative schedule. So it's, our guys are working from home. We're working on our computers. We're meeting up at different spots in the Capitol to go over the bills and review them and everything. And it is really, it's sad. I've met so many amazing people. I've been treated with such kindness. And again, just people that helped us really keep New Mexico front and center. And so great relationships here, but I know those will continue.
Sure.
I will look forward to continuing to stay engaged with all of my colleagues here and keep my finger on the pulse so I can know what's going on. And of course, keeping everybody in New Mexico informed as well.
Absolutely. I'm kind of curious, looking back at your term here, what's been the high water mark for you? What was, is there anything that you could point out that you said this is the most proud thing I did in my term in Congress? Is there anything you could, or is it a couple things that you really, were really that you're proud of or so happy about?
I'm really proud of, mostly proud of our staff, our team, that even in the minority, we were able to really, again, just deliver. And we introduced some great legislation. In fact, it makes me kind of smile that here they're starting to talk again about Title 42 on the border, and now senators are coming out and everybody's coming out saying, if that goes completely away, we're in worse trouble than we are right now. And yet here, what was it, almost 2 years ago, we introduced the bill, the PAUSE Act, to keep Title 42 in play. And I'm thinking to myself, if we only just worked together across party lines and did what was right for the American people, that bill could have kept the border in check. I'm not saying we wouldn't have any illegal crossings. We would have, of course, but it was such a very important tool. And now it's kind of like trying to put toothpaste back in the tube. But, we did get some language in an appropriations bill for our ranchers and those losing livestock because of the Mexican gray wolf. And just so many little issues that were happening around the state that we were able to highlight and make sure there was awareness, the Gila cattle over there with the whole Forest Service coming in and taking those out, but absolutely highlighting the energy. And I think one of the most important things we did is all of the trips that we brought members of Congress out to New Mexico. I mean, we had a border trip. We had 2 trips down to the oil patch. We had the Western Caucus meetings out there just in October, and just highlighting New Mexico all the time and pushing, what we do and how important our state is. And, even though we only had one conservative voice, we were very relevant in the grand scheme of things as it relates to energy, trade, border crossings, our ag operations. And so I think it's just kind of all of the above, but no way would any of that happen without having just an amazing staff. And I would say it all the time, the staff, they're better and smarter than I am. They just don't like to talk in front of a microphone. And I used to joke around, but, and I realized these are the people that really were wanting to make sure I did good and we did good together as a team for the state. And I think that is really what I'm most proud of.
Yeah. So I imagine the kind of the fun part for you now is kind of writing recommendations and watching your staff kind of move up the ladder to their goals and dreams too. So that's probably the fun part of your job. It's fun and sad at the same time. But my biggest concern was to make sure all of our staff, landed on their feet and found positions where they wanted to go, where they could really, the important thing that their talents and their skill sets could be used.
And I'm thankful that, one went to a deputy chief of staff position, one's going to work on a committee, one's going to work in a colleague's office, and just, but they're all going, you're right. I put out a lot of reference letters, made a bunch of phone calls, and, so I'm very excited that they're all landing on their feet. So that was something that really bothered me, but it worked out well. So I'm grateful for that.
Hey, if you don't mind, I'd like to, just because I imagine we have a few young people listening, like the folks that are on your staff, is there aspirations to eventually be elected officials, or do they look to go to be like chiefs of staff or kind of head of behind the scenes? Or I imagine it's a little bit of everything, but for young people that are interested in careers in this area, what's that path? I mean, are those folks trying to become the next congressperson, or are they trying to be like the next chief of staff for the president, or is it, what's kind of generally where people that work on or serve on a congressional staff, what's kind of their end game? What are they hoping to achieve from there?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Some of them come in as interns, and then they end up saying, "Hey, I kind of like what's happening. I want to get more involved," and then they'll go ahead and apply for, say, a staff assistant. And then there is a lot of upward movement there because, then you can get into a legislative director, you can get into all these different positions. And obviously, when you start getting into it and understand it, and that's your niche, a couple of our guys, their niche isn't public as far as being the face of the office and speaking and campaigning, but they're very, very suited for policy and what drives the policy of creating really good policies. And that's kind of their wheelhouse and their niche. Others are more about managing people and managing the office. And so clearly they kind of get the overview of everything. And there is opportunity for people to move up, into a deputy director or a chief of staff position, that type of thing. So there is mobility for sure. And if it's something that people are interested in, and we had amazing interns throughout our entire time, the 2 years up here, we had a lot of interns, most of them from New Mexico, but some from Texas or Virginia, different places, because I always felt like everybody that came in the door brought value, whether they were the chief of staff or me or an intern who had never been to the Capitol.
Sure.
And to expose just how the process works and kind of the insides of it all to some of these young people who had, some of them they were, say, for instance, studying communications in college. And so what we would do is we would pair them up with our communications director so they could help with the press releases and help with the news hits and some of the things we did in the media. And so we tried to really help enhance their skill sets with the people in our office, but we could expose them to areas where they could say, wow, I'm really interested in XYZ. And so we could actually kind of help facilitate that. And yes, there's a lot of people on the Hill that have started out, in a very low level position, but then have now, here they are chief of staff for somebody, and then beyond, because I look at even one of Steve Pierce's chief of staff, now he's, I believe, opened a firm of his own for lobbying and doing some different things. So, you just, if it's something that draws you, I think there's so many different opportunities to get into, but I think coming in as an intern, if you're young and want to just see how it all works, is a great opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. That way you can kind of decide if this is something you love and want to keep going, or if something that you don't want to do before you get too deep in it and find your next passion kind of thing. So
Right. Because not all of it's going to be, the congressperson or the senator. There's, like I said, the policy, there's lobbying, there's communications, there's correspondence, there's so many different things that are, attached to it. So yeah, it's, I think, a great opportunity and experience to kind of see it from the inside out and then kind of look at your path and see what direction you want to go.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. So, and I imagine too, for, a lot of things and the way things are done, people on the outside be kind of scratching their head, but folks on the inside are, well, it makes sense if you see it from this angle and kind of thing. So
yeah. Well, we still scratch our heads too. we still kind of wonder what the heck's going on. But I do think that it gives people the understanding of what's crazy is government is so entrenched in every single part of our lives. And I know there are a lot of people that just kind of, it doesn't matter. My vote doesn't count, or I don't care. Everybody should care because it's everything from buying cars, groceries, utilities, to banking, to loans, to education. There's nothing that you can think of that isn't touched by something government, and especially federal government. And that's why we should have the right people in office. We should have accountability. I think we should have term limits. But this is what happens now. We're watching it unfold before our very eyes when we have a very bloated government with, feeling as though money just grows on trees and these blank checks they're writing, this crazy spending. This spending is impacting every single person's life. And that's why government and getting the right people involved and keeping people engaged and keeping government accountable is so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're absolutely right about term limits. I think you and I have talked about this a bunch over the years, but at the end of the day, I think one of the biggest things we can do as Americans to kind of maybe balance the scales a little bit is put term limits on Congress members. There's a reason why governors and presidents and everyone else has term limits because these jobs aren't meant to be career jobs. Congress is the exact same way. Yeah, those are you're supposed to take your experience that you've gained from your life and implement that into Congress. Is supposed to come. Your top of your craft is lawyers and farmers and whatever it is, and then now you come and use that experience to help lead our country. It wasn't designed for people to say, I'm going to go to college and grow up and be a congressperson. That's just not how it's designed to be.
Yeah, and I think that's how also we keep new ideas and things change. Look how technology's changed over the last 30, 40, 50 years, the last 5 years even. And I just think that's how we keep kind of people engaged. And I agree with you. I don't think the founders ever expected somebody to go and serve in Congress for, 40 or 45 years.
Yeah.
I look at some of the people and it's like they're 89 years old, 88 years old, 87 years old. It's like, wow, how about some of these 30 or 40-year-olds? But on the other side of that coin, it's gotten so ugly, Mike. And so, I think there's great people that want to do it, but it's if you step into this, you're going to be run through the ringer. You're going to have attacks all the time. They're going to go after you, your family, anything you ever even did. And that's unfortunate.
It is.
I wish we kind of capped how much money were spent on these elections so that the candidates would have, I enjoy running around the district and meeting people and developing relationships, and it's a hard thing to do, especially with these giant districts, but I think people deserve that, and they need to know a person and know what they stand for instead of just, everything, all things TV. And look at the millions and millions of dollars being spent in these races all over the country. Billions, actually.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's a whole industry that it shouldn't have to be.
Right.
So,
exactly.
So I'm curious, what do you want to do next? What are your, what do you, are you kind of gonna, are you done? Or are you kind of taking a break? What's your goals? What do you want to do now that, once your obligation's done here in January?
Yeah, I really want to keep my foot in the door and keep all options on the table.
Yeah.
I will tell you, I have had literally, and I mean this, hundreds and hundreds of people throughout the district have reached out, text, cards, calls, and said, please stay in the fight. You were exactly what we needed. We appreciate your hard work and your team. And even members, I would say 75 of the members that I know personally here have all said, please run again. Mike Huckabee even called me at Thanksgiving and said, I hope you'll run again. We just need more like you. And that just makes my heart full. And so I'm going to keep all options on the table for sure. I really feel called to do this, and I don't want to think that my work is over. I think it was just getting started. And of course, we still have the lawsuit in January, where we're going to have oral arguments before the New Mexico Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And, that can impact things as well. But the thing I am most proud of right this minute is, the Democrats probably expected us to lose by 8 or 10 points because of the way that district shifted. And the fact that we lost by less than 1%, 0.6%, it just tells the story. We know our message worked. We know we were doing the right thing for New Mexico. We know we pulled a lot of support from across the aisle with us. And I just, I think our country is too important, and I think our state is too important. And I'm just going to take some time and pray about it, but certainly keep my finger on the pulse, and then we'll see where we go in the next couple of months for sure.
Good deal. But don't be surprised if in a couple of years we see Yvette Herrell running for Congress once again. It could be very much a possibility. So
that's right. It's very possible. And I just, like I said, it was a real exciting time. We knew it would be razor thin, and if we could have had just a little bit better turnout in the red counties, this would be a totally different conversation. But I know God has a plan, and we're just going to be proud of the work we've accomplished, and then get ready for the next chapter.
Sure. And if, I just want to change hats from Congress to Republican Party just for a second, if I could. Quite frankly, I think, I'm not inside, but I think, to be honest, the Republican Party of New Mexico needs a lot of work right now. And I imagine there's going to be people like you that they turn to help, revitalize and kind of regroup here in New Mexico. Is that a pretty fair statement, I'm thinking?
Yeah. I was very blessed because our team had such good relationships with all the county chairs, for instance, in our district. And we really developed those relationships as a campaign because we knew we had to have the help of, all these grassroots folks. And of course, we had a really good group of volunteers from New Mexico State University and UNM, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. But it works when you have communication. I got on the phone every other week with a volunteer group, people, and I have no idea. Some of them were the students, some of them were just grassroots, some of them were party chairs in their respective counties. And we just continued to talk. I tell them what I'm up to, what I'm doing, where I'm going to be, and so we had a really good line of communication. And I think there's people out there that want to help and want to do. They just need direction. And I think you're right. It's time we kind of come back together, get our act together, so to speak, because in 2024 it'll be the presidential, it'll be the House and Senate races, it'll be the congressional races, there'll be a U.S. Senate race. I mean, I just think that New Mexico deserves to be treated better on a federal level and looked at more deeply. And we often get kind of brushed over because we only have the 5 electoral votes. We just kind of seem like we're not a player. But I think what I learned, the biggest surprise I learned in this election, I was very nervous in the beginning of this new district, thinking, am I going to even connect with people? Are they in the new parts of the district? You know what, Mike? I did. I connected with them because at the end of the day, we're Americans. Mm-hmm. We're New Mexicans. We care about, faith, family, freedom. We care about our kids, the future of our state, our country. There was a lot more commonalities than not. And I think we need to move away from the mainstream media to tell us what to think and feel and who to like and who to hate, and just develop those personal relationships, because we're all New Mexicans at the end of the day. And trust me, there is a lot more that we can talk about in a good way than just tearing each other down. So we need to start building that up from the ground up, and then really start that communication around the state and stop letting it be so divisive. Because at the end, I would say, I'm sure you heard me say it. I would say, I'm not the most important person on the ballot. You are. This is about, faith, family, your livelihoods, your freedoms, and I think we need to just get back to basics and treat each other respectively, regardless of party, and start finding that common denominator so we can build our state up and then build our country up.
You're right. Because, the way, and this is something both parties do. This isn't exclusive to one another, but at election time, it gets down and dirty. Dirty. And I imagine people, especially like you said, when you're going into new parts of your district now, or places that, people may not be as familiar with. And so all they know is what they see on TV and the ads that, your attack ads that have you looking like you're the devil incarnate, and vice versa on the other side. So when they finally come to see you for the first time, and they're like, oh my goodness, she's a beautiful, nice human being that just talks like a human and isn't the devil that everyone makes her look out to be. Then you're like, oh, wait a minute. And I think that's just it. We basically, each side tells each other that your person is basically Hitler part 2. and then when you actually meet them like that, that's not the case. And it's both sides. I'm just saying, but I think there's a lot of that going on where just people that don't know, they're just seeing ads on TV. They really think that you're some kind of evil person. And then they talk to them and they're like, wait a minute, none of that's true. So I imagine you probably run into some of that where people have a preconceived notion just straight off of commercials and things, you know?
I ran into 3 comments that made me kind of smile. I met with a group in the South Valley and chatted with them and talked, and it was, whatever questions, whatever they wanted to ask. And then I had a couple of people say, "You're really pretty normal." And I said, "Yes, I'm just a girl from New Mexico," and then I had somebody say, "You're taller than you look on TV." And then one guy said, "Oh, you're way prettier than TV." And I said, "Yeah, that's because they take the worst pictures they can find. I don't know where they get them, And I would remind people all the time. I said, if we have shared values, those ads aren't just about me; they're about you too. I said, I'm just the only one they had those really ugly pictures of. I said, but it could have been anybody that kind of had those shared values. But that's the problem. We got to get more God into the conversation, and we have to just have an ability or a willingness or a want to build relationships from the ground up. And I think for me, that's just, part of the success of the office is talking to people. I know we're not all going to agree on everything all the time, but when you build those relationships and can kind of know, how can we work together on this or that, this policy or that, or what can we do? I can tell you right now, I'm very proud of this work we just are getting done. Of course, it'll be as we leave the office, but, with this communication opportunity with KRWG and the Border Patrol and this data casting, no one's, that's the kind of stuff we can do. And no one's saying, well, is it Republican or Democrat? Or guess what? It's for public safety. It's for safety of our men and women in uniform, for our communities. That's what should be the first and foremost in every single decision we make, and I used to say, no one calls the 911 dispatcher and says, well, are you a Republican or a Democrat?
Exactly.
Did you vote in the last 3 elections? Because at the end of the day, we're people and we're communities and we're Americans. And we need to just get back to the basics of being able to say, we can be friendly with each other and we can work together. But the mainstream media would have you think differently. And that's what we've got to break through.
Yeah, and that's the thing we all have to remember is before the D, before the R, there's American. And we are all Americans.
That's right.
And
we all, exactly right.
And we all, I believe this. I think every American wants basically the same thing, and that's to pursue their dreams, to live their lives and be happy, and create that same foundation for the next generation of their family. That's right. The American dream, and we may not all agree on what exactly that is, for each individual, but we all want to get to that same place. And if we all legislate and run our country that manner, I think we'll find we have a lot more in common than we do not have in common. We have a lot of people that feed off fear and power, and they think that power gives, and the way to get power is to convince you that it's us against them mentality, and that's the mindset we all have now. And it's like, no, it's not. That person that disagrees with you on a policy is not your arch enemy. They're just an American there's probably other things you all agree exactly on. It's just, that's what makes me mad. But we focus so much on the parts that divide us, and I get it. Yeah, there's some big differences of opinion on some of this, but at the same time, I think if you pull back the ridiculousness and let's look at the bare bones, I think we can come together on some of this stuff.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's right, and I think we need to, in social media, these social media platforms and cell phones and all these things have really diminished the ability to have that personal connection. And, news travels so fast, and fake news travels even faster. And, people, like you say, people just hear or see something on social media or TV and take it as gospel truth instead of, doing their due diligence. And I used to, as I was running around, I tell people, hey, pro tip, not everything you read on the internet is going to be truthful.
Yeah.
But I think with the social media aspect, we've gotten too easy at texting or, sending an email instead of a note or a card, or actually sitting down and having coffee. And I tell you, when you sit down with people and you're looking across the table into other people's eyes and you're having honest conversations, that's meaningful, because, you're not going to just walk away and then go, okay, I don't care about that. I'm going to do whatever. You actually then start talking to them more about how do we fix this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of the best policies come out of the idea of two groups completely at opposite ends of it, then coming together and finding actual consensus. And I think that's where we see some of the best policy are born out of those different mindsets, those different ideas coming together to write policy that actually work and are effective. And we've just moved so far away from that, unfortunately.
I agree. Well, hopefully, maybe we can get back there someday. Hopefully.
You bet.
Absolutely. Well, I know you probably got a bunch of stuff to get to, and so we'll let you get back to it. But hopefully we're not done talking to you. Hopefully we get a chance to talk to you a little bit more before you're officially riding off into the sunset here for a little bit. But again, Congresswoman, thank you so much again for your service to this community. I know there's so many New Mexicans here that are so thankful for the work that you've done, and I'm one of them. And we look forward to your next adventure here, and we appreciate all the leadership and guidance that you've given this state. We cannot thank you enough for that.
Well, I appreciate it, and it was not just me. It was an absolute team effort, and it was everybody in the state, and we do good things when we all come together. So it has been my greatest honor, and definitely we'll have to talk again before the end of the term. So we may have to catch up at the end of December, the very 1st of January, and do this again.
There you go, and then we'll hopefully you find a place that has. It's like New Mexico with the warmth, but comes with trees with coconuts and something you can hang out with for at least a few weeks or so to kind of clear the head and reset the slate there a little bit.
There you go. There
Awesome.
you go. Sounds good.
Well,
awesome. Well, thank you, Mike. You have a blessed day, and thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you, ma'am. You as well, and happy holidays. If I don't talk to you before the Christmas break here, and we'll talk to you again soon. Okay.
Sounds great. Okay, take care.
Thank you. You too, ma'am.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. All right. That was